lost 25 pounds of fat without exercise. This is not in monkeys, this is in human beings, and it is wild. This could signify the beginning of the end of recreational anabolic steroid use in the larger population. Listen, IFBB pros will always take whatever they can to get that competitive edge, but for the rest of us, why take gear when you can take these drugs instead, get an incredible physique leagues above what you could naturally, and still preserve your natural test and fertility? Seems like a no-brainer to me. What's up guys, Dr. Alex here, board certified urologist and men's health specialist, and today we're taking a deep dive on some bleeding edge science that's creating a huge buzz. Are we on the precipice of ditching anabolic steroids forever? Actually, there's a decent chance that we might be, and it's all thanks to a revolutionary new class of drugs broadly known as myostatin inhibitors. Remember seeing those crazy pictures on the internet a few years ago of super jacked bulls, dogs, and mice? Yep, that's a real drug product now that is actively being researched and will be hitting the market sooner than you might think. Now, many of you, much like myself, follow leading experts and YouTubers in the fitness and nutrition space, like Dr. Mike Israetel from Renaissance Periodization.
I think about violence all the time.
He recently put out an insightful video discussing these new muscle-enhancing drugs. The video was pretty solid and it sparked a lot of discussion regarding these compounds. But there is a lot of info about these drugs that wasn't included in that video, and that still deserves discussion. So today, we're gonna jump into it with 5 major points. First off, what are the major classes of physique-altering drugs that we've had access to so far? Number 2, what are myostatin inhibitors and what makes them so special? Number 3, what are the current drugs being investigated and where do they stand? Number 4, what does this mean for overall public health? And lastly, number 5, what does this mean for the world of performance enhancement? Bookmarks to each of these sections will be in the description down below. Let's start with a quick review of the types of compounds that have been used for physique building up until this point. Basically, there are 3 main categories: steroids, SARMs, and peptides. Everything else, SERMs, aromatase inhibitors, fat burners, those all get tossed in the ancillary bucket for the purposes of today's talk. Today, we are focused on the heavy hitters and nothing else. First off is steroids. As we all know, since the time of ancient civilization, people have been trying to get more jacked. Don't believe me? Just check out Gerard Butler from 300. Dude looks like he starts his day with frickin' Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Now, the good Mr. Butler likely relied on old-fashioned anabolic androgenic steroids to help achieve this look. Testosterone itself was first isolated in the 1930s and probably entered the world of bodybuilding maybe in the late 50s before becoming more commonplace in the 60s. As we previously discussed on this channel, anabolic androgenic steroids are small, simple molecules that get their name from the 4-carbon ring structure at their core. And although when we colloquially use the word steroid in conversation, this is what we're talking about, it's important to remember that there are other steroids like glucocorticoids or mineralocorticoids. So don't bother trying to steal your grandma's prednisone. She needs that for her rheumatism. And more importantly, it will not get you more jacked. But it might give you a hunchback and give you diabetes, so choices? Now, steroids work obviously, but they have a ton of drawbacks. They can be toxic for your heart, liver, brain, blood pressure, psyche, skin, hair, the list goes on and on. Regardless what anyone may claim, these are ancient and clumsy compounds that have only stuck around because Big Pharma hasn't had a financial incentive to make anything better, until now. Remember that whole financial incentive thing because that's going to become more important later. Now, the second group of compounds relevant to body composition are SARMs. SARMs were supposed to be the next generation of steroid substitutes. Researchers thought, reasonably so, if steroids bind to the androgen receptor all willy-nilly and causing these terrible side effects, what if we could develop compounds that bound to those same receptors but selectively and only gave the effects we want? Great idea in theory, but the problem is SARMs just suck. They don't provide selectively anabolic effects and generally speaking are just crummier versions of the steroids they're trying to imitate. Don't believe me? Why do you think Big Pharma hasn't brought a single SARM to market? If there was even a chance these drugs could improve cancer outcomes and take a slice out of US insurance companies' quarterly earnings statements, Big Pharma would be all over them like the US military on an oil-rich Middle Eastern country that needs democracy. So SARMs suck, they were a failed experiment, and we all just need to move on. Now, time for the third and hippest category of physique-altering drugs, peptides. Peptides are just protein fragments that can have very precise effects on very particular receptors. They're infinitely more complex than even SARMs, but actually aren't that hard to manufacture. So, Ronak, a buddy of mine works for Lilly, and his one job for like a whole year was just trying to figure out every conceivable way to manufacture tirzepatide to try and get it off the shortage list. I swear to God, if they could have figured out a way to distill Manjaro out of the Himalayan spring water and pine needles, they would have. Speaking of Lilly, the first peptide to come to market was actually insulin. This was isolated all the way back in 1921 and then produced en masse by Lilly in 1923, just based about 3 miles that way. The next big peptide that most people forget is in fact a peptide is human growth hormone. First isolated from cadavers in the late 50s, this form of GH was used in children with pituitary deficiencies starting in the 60s. Unfortunately, it had this nasty habit of occasionally giving patients mad cow disease, so once recombinant, aka lab-made growth hormone, became available in 1985, this cadaver form was totally abandoned. GH then spread like wildfire through the bodybuilding community, which turned out to be a major double-edged sword because although we got some of the wildest physiques of all time, we also got the Crime Control Act of 1990. This law basically put growth hormone into a complete regulatory category of its own, and depending on how you read it, basically made it totally illegal to prescribe off-label. Like, lose your medical license and go to jail illegal if you prescribed it for anything except an explicitly documented deficiency. As a result, we had a flood of other peptides all designed to boost GH hit the market. GHRP2, GHRP6, Sermorelin, Ipamorelin, all cool compounds that were available as research candidates or as prescribed through compounding pharmacies, but none of them could hold a candle to actual GH when it came to IGF-1 levels. So that brings us to the current peptide renaissance with the success of GLP-1 agonist drugs like semaglutide, tirzepatide, and now retatrutide for weight loss. Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for our upcoming deep dive on retatrutide. These drugs are wildly effective at weight loss by targeting the glucagon receptor, increasing satiety, and basically decreasing caloric intake, aka you're still just eating less because no matter how hard you try, you just can't beat thermodynamics. But it's not all good news. A substantial portion of that loss coming from GLP-1s, sometimes up to 35 to 40%, isn't just fat, it's a valuable lean muscle mass. Losing muscle isn't just a problem for vanity or gym selfies, although it is indeed that. Losing lean mass slows your metabolism, reduces strength, and potentially makes long-term weight maintenance harder. On average, most patients, after stopping their GLP-1s, will regain 2/3 of the weight they lost. Because when your appetite comes back, guess what? You start eating again. This leads to a critical question. Can we get the powerful fat loss benefits of GLP-1s while protecting our hard-earned muscle and potentially making that weight loss more sustainable? Enter our fourth, latest, greatest, and coolest category of drugs that are actively being researched right now: myostatin inhibitors, aka monoclonal antibodies. Now, before we get into specific drugs, let's quickly cover what we're talking about today. We're talking about monoclonal antibodies. Your body naturally produces antibodies to fight off invaders like bacteria and viruses. Each antibody is like a tiny, highly specialized soldier, programmed to recognize and attach to a very specific target, an antigen, on that invader. Monoclonal simply means that scientists identify one super effective antibody and then make millions of identical copies or clones of it in a lab. So you get a highly purified army of these smart proteins all designed to do one very specific job. You can often spot them because of their generic drug names ending in mab, like Bimagrumab or Trevogrumab. These aren't your typical pills. They are protein-based therapies, usually given by injection or infusion. They can be engineered to block harmful signals, activate helpful ones, or even deliver other medicines directly to a target cell. So how do these mAbs potentially help with muscle? Our bodies have a sophisticated natural system that regulates muscle growth. Think of it like a set of brakes that prevent our muscles from growing uncontrollably. Key players in this system are proteins like myostatin, also known as GDF8, and activin A. These proteins signal through docking stations on muscle cells called activin type 2 receptors. When myostatin or activin A bind to these receptors, they essentially tell the muscle to slow down growth or even break it down. Remember those jacked bulls, dogs, and mice? Those were myostatin knockouts, which basically meant they were born without myostatin to slow down muscle growth. What we're talking about now is a way to turn the volume down on myostatin and those of us not blessed enough to be born without it. Now here's a crucial point that often gets overlooked. Not all drugs in this category of myostatin inhibitors work the same way. Scientists are developing monoclonal antibodies that target different parts of this pathway. Some antibodies are designed to directly grab and neutralize myostatin itself, while others are designed to directly grab and neutralize activin. And some receptors actually work by blocking activin type 2 receptors, so even if myostatin or activin A are present, they can't deliver their stop growing message. Understanding these different targets is key to understanding the nuances and differences between the drugs we're about to discuss. All right, let's get into the specifics of 3 key monoclonal antibodies in this space. And we'll start with one that is probably the closest to reaching market and unfortunately was not mentioned by Dr. Mike in his recent video. By the way, Ronick, I'm starting a rumor that Dr. Mike is a total Regeneron shill who's getting paid under the table in stock options, and that's how he afforded his love handle surgery. I mean, it's total BS, but could you imagine if it was true? The comment section would be insane. Starting off with number 1, Bimagrumab, aka BYM338. Bimagrumab is a fascinating compound that has been in research since the early 2010s. While newer agents often grab headlines, Bimagrumab has a significant body of clinical evidence from when its original inventor, Novartis, tried to get it approved for inclusion body myositis, a super rare muscle wasting disease. It actually hit all its marks in phase 1 and 2 studies, and it totally puts on muscle. But hilariously, researchers made the primary endpoint of its 2016 phase 3 clinical trial freaking cardio. Ronick, I can't make this up. They actually used a 6-minute walking distance as the final endpoint. I mean, okay, you could justify that maybe that's like muscular endurance or something, but are you kidding me? This is for a purely anabolic compound. I mean, any gym bro could have told them that probably wasn't gonna work, and this is why we need to get more molecular biologists into the gym. So that failed fantastically, but researchers noticed that participants in the study did gain a significant amount of muscle while losing fat. So since they already proved the drug was safe with their original phase 1 trial data, they rolled right into another phase 2 trial in 2017 to 2019, looking at using Bimagrumab in obesity. This is where Bimagrumab really shone. A 48-week study in adults with type 2 diabetes and a BMI between 28 and 40 showed wild results. Compared to placebo, patients on Bimagrumab experienced a 20.5% reduction in total body fat mass. That's about 7.5 kilograms or 16.5 pounds. A 3.6% increase in lean mass, about 1.7 kilos or 3.7 pounds, and a significant reduction in waist circumference, an average of 9 centimeters or 3.5 inches if you use freedom units. In addition to this, they also improved their hemoglobin A1C, dropping it on average by 0.76 percentage points. This simultaneous fat loss and muscle gain, along with improved glycemic control, was super promising, and these results were published in 2021. But why did it take so long to publish these results if they finished in 2019? And why didn't it come to market with Novartis? Because it didn't remotely compare to Ozempic, which had already hit the market in 2017. So Novartis shelved it. But Eli Lilly saw the writing on the wall, and after releasing tirzepatide in 2022, it acquired Bimagrumab from Novartis in 2023 to the tune of $2 billion with a B. So how does it actually work? Bimagrumab doesn't target myostatin or activin A directly. Instead, it's a fully human monoclonal antibody that binds with high affinity to activin type 2 A and B receptors. By blocking these receptors, it prevents myostatin, activin A, and potentially other similar ligands from signaling the muscle to stop growing or break down. Think of it as putting those childproof covers over the electrical sockets. Now, Lilly is moving the ball forward as fast as they can and is currently running the phase 2b Believe trial, evaluating Bimagrumab alone and in combination with semaglutide in obese adults without type 2 diabetes. Results from this are anticipated to be presented at the American Diabetes Association Scientific Sessions in June 2025, which is later this month. I think this is the first time making a video has led me to buying stock. This is not financial or medical advice, by the way. Some more fun details about Bimagrumab is that its side effect profile seems pretty mild. The most common adverse effects reported in the diabetes and obesity trial included diarrhea, about 47% compared to 11%, and muscle spasms, about 41% compared to 3%. Now, some patients experience transient elevations in pancreatic and liver enzymes, particularly after the first dose, but that tended to subside later on. Rare cases of pancreatitis have been reported across its entire clinical program, but this is only 2 cases in over 1,000 adults. Compare this to any of the horror stories from my shorts on anabolics, and you can see why this is so exciting. So, Ronick, one of the side effects is spontaneous nosebleeds. They don't know how common it is, but I'm so excited for the day when physique influencers are posting Instagram reels of them training with freaking tampons in their noses. Can you imagine like Kenny KO doing his future natty or not videos, coming up to like these super jacked dudes and they've got like 2 like Playtex like tampons in their nose? Like, nah, bro, like, this is just how I have sensitive sinuses. Yeah, no, it's just that. I don't know what you're talking about. Now it's time for our second contender, Trevogrumab, aka REGN1033 from Regeneron Pharmaceuticals. Now this is one of the 2 drugs that Dr. Mike covered in his video. Trevogrumab is a fully human monoclonal that takes a more direct approach by specifically targeting and neutralizing myostatin, aka GDF8 itself. So it's designed to catch the myostatin protein before it can even reach its receptor. The big news for Trevogrumab actually isn't the primate data that Dr. Mike cited, but it actually comes from the ongoing phase 2 COURAGE trial. This study is investigating Trevogrumab with or without another antibody, Garetosmab, which we'll discuss next, in combination with semaglutide for obesity. It's structured into two 26-week periods. The first 26-week period is what's considered the weight loss phase, where patients are receiving one of 4 regimens. And then in the second phase, they transition to a weight maintenance phase, where they'll transition to either just Trevogrumab or placebo. This is basically what Dr. Mike described in his video, but what he was describing in primates is actually ongoing right now in real humans in clinical trials. Now here are the 4 regimens for the weight loss phase. The first is just semaglutide. The second is semaglutide plus low-dose Trevogrumab. The third is semaglutide plus high-dose Trevogrumab, while the fourth is semaglutide plus high-dose Trevogrumab and Garetosmab. Now, although this study is still ongoing, Regeneron has just released their interim results with at least 50% of patients completing their first 26-week block, and the results are super promising for preserving muscle during GLP-1 induced weight loss. So now let's get into the numbers. Semaglutide alone led to about a 34.5% of the total weight loss being from lean mass. So about a third of all the weight that was lost was weight you don't want to lose. It was lean muscle. The average was about 8 pounds of muscle loss. Okay, cool, we knew this already. Now, adding Trevogrumab, either lower or higher dose to semaglutide, helped to preserve about 50% of the lean mass that would have otherwise been lost in the semaglutide group alone. This means patients only lost about 4 pounds of muscle. But the triple therapy with Garetosmab is where it is at, with only 2 pounds of lean muscle being lost. And get this, the total fat loss with just semaglutide was about 15 pounds, which let's just say is crazy in half a year. But in the combination group, they lost 25 pounds of fat without exercise. This is not in monkeys, this is in human beings, and it is wild. Now, time for side effects. We don't know the details super well, but the combination of semaglutide with Trevogrumab was reported as being generally well tolerated in the interim analysis. The rate of treatment-emergent adverse events, aka side effects, was similar to or slightly higher than semaglutide alone, and we all know what those are. And severe side effects and discontinuations due to adverse effects were relatively low in the Trevogrumab-only combo arms. Now onto our third and final candidate, Garetosmab. Okay, so I kind of gave things away with the previous talk on Trevogrumab. Garetosmab is not currently being studied on its own for muscle gain or fat loss, but it is being studied for an orphan disease known as fibrodysplasia ossificans progressive, aka FOP. The FOP trials are actually already in phase 3 and the results are promising, but we don't know what they say about lean tissue because they're still ongoing and that isn't one of their primary endpoints anyways. Now, whereas Trevogrumab targeted myostatin itself, Garetosmab specifically targets and blocks activin. The side effects of Garetosmab itself are thought to be pretty similar to Trevogrumab on its own, but we don't really know, and we especially don't know anything about the triple therapy group from the previously cited study. So as you can see, this is a dynamic and rapidly evolving field of research. I mean, in just 1 week, we went from getting excited about multi-year-old primate data to actually talking about pertinent clinical trials going on right now. Also, dear God, please click the like and subscribe button, hit the bell, and comment. These videos take so much work. And I just heard from Ronick that like 95.8% of you, like basically all of you, are not subscribed. Please subscribe. It would be a huge deal for us and the channel. And as a small thank you, here's a picture of a jacked whippet. Just my way of saying thanks. But despite fast-moving science, the actual process of bringing pharmaceutical products to market moves at a glacial pace. Let's talk clinical trial phases. Drugs go through multiple phases of clinical trials. Phase 1, safety in small groups. Phase 2, efficacy and more safety in larger groups, where much of our data today comes from, and then the large pivotal Phase 3 trials confirming efficacy for the target disease state, safety in very large populations, and some other final data before they can even be considered for approval by regulatory agencies like the FDA. This approval takes years, not months. Even with promising Phase 2 data, successful Phase 3 trials take time and significant investment. Therefore, widespread commercial availability of these specific monoclonal antibodies as treatments to preserve muscle during GLP-1 induced weight loss is still likely several years away. We need to see the full results from ongoing Phase 2 studies, followed by the design, execution, and successful completion of Phase 3 trials, and then regulatory review by the FDA. And that's all the time it's going to take to get these drugs formally approved by the FDA, which means it's going to be even longer before that dude with the black duffel bag behind the gym actually has some that you can buy and use for your personal bodybuilding goals. Now, while Lilly's Bimagrumab has a longer track record in published metabolic studies and Regeneron's agents are making waves with new combination data, seeing any of these drugs on the market before 2028 would be shocking. Shockingly awesome, but shocking all the same. Now, the potential implications here, especially for the general population using GLP-1 medications, are profound. The goal is achieving quality weight loss, not just numbers on a scale. This isn't really news to anyone who's ever set foot in a gym. It's not about the numbers on the scale, it's about how your genes fit. If we're able to help people lose fat and gain lean muscle, we could radically change what healthcare looks like in the United States. I mean, muscle is metabolically active tissue, so preserving it helps maintain a healthier metabolic rate, and if people are all over healthier, that means we're going to have less utilization of healthcare resources, which will significantly improve society as a whole. And more muscle means people are going to retain more strength and be able to perform daily activities for longer, which might mean less hip fractures or other major accidents that can be associated with aging and weakness. Now, these drugs aren't magic bullets, and they won't replace healthy eating and regular exercise. But hey, we suck at those things clearly, and every little bit helps. But let's cut to the chase. What are the chances that juicing the heck out of these things will make you look like a natty Rodney Coleman? Actually, pretty decent. Although these compounds have so far only showed muscle retention in obese patients trying to lose weight, the same thing happens with any other anabolic steroid. So it's logical to conclude that with proper diet, resistance training, and if we know anything about the strength and physique community, comical overdosing, these drugs might just work wonders. But it is worth repeating that although these monoclonal antibodies are not anabolic steroids, they are not without their own potential adverse effects. We don't know the cardiac effects of these things. And guess what? Your heart is a muscle. So unregulated muscle growth could cause some major problems. Also, some monoclonals designed for cancer have some pretty wicked immune system side effects. Think puking, rashes, and new onset autoimmune disorders. So don't volunteer to be your own lab rat just yet. And we have to remember that these muscle building compounds work in parallel with the androgen receptor, not in place of it. So we'll likely see a synergistic effect with anabolic steroid use, which means we'll still see guys blasting tests in addition to whatever monoclonal they've managed to swipe from Fat Uncle Freddy's fridge. But still, I truly believe this could signify the beginning of the end of recreational anabolic steroid use in the larger population. Listen, IFBB pros will always take whatever they can to get that competitive edge, but for the rest of us, why take gear when you can take these drugs instead, get an incredible physique leagues above what you could naturally, and still preserve your natural test and fertility? Seems like a no-brainer to me, but I'm old and don't pop Zens and actually remember watching Bro Science Life back when he actually posted videos. So what do I know? P.S. Mike, if you're watching this, I am totally down for collabing on a shell core scrub line. Call me. So to wrap things up, monoclonal antibodies targeting the myostatin and activin pathways, drugs like Bimagrumab, Trevogrumab, and Garetosmab represent the bleeding edge in body recomposition. They hold the promise of helping people achieve healthier, higher quality weight loss, particularly by mitigating the muscle loss associated with potent drugs like GLP-1 receptor agonists. They might also, down the line, offer new strategies for conditions like sarcopenia, also known as being too small for girls to see you when you turn sideways. But, and this is a big but, we still need to temper our excitement with patience. These drugs are still investigational. We're still awaiting full phase 2 results for most of them, and phase 3 trials are the next major hurdle. And when it comes to safety and efficacy data, this is going to take time to accumulate. And finally, these are tools to be used alongside of, not instead of, healthy lifestyle choices. And as we mentioned previously, it will likely be several years before we can start to see these medications on pharmacy shelves. Now, it takes years for drug development and approval, and this process is long for a reason. Don't agree? Turn off Safe Search on Google and look up thalidomide. I dare you. Now I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on these developments? Are you excited about the potential of new gains without nuking your testicles? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you found this deep dive helpful, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell. These deep dive videos are fun, but they are absolutely brutal to make. And you guys watching, sharing, and commenting gives us the feedback we need to keep making them. Until next time, this is Dr. Alex Tatem, signing off.